if we had to disrupt ourselves, what would we do? And then what do you have to believe that's the right time to invest in that? While I was in that window, my grandmother, she was 90. She had a stroke. She had to go to the hospital. She got discharged over to the rehab center, and her medication list didn't come over in full because it got lost in the fax machine. The real challenge for me as I look at my team or look at the company is how do we make sure that we're balancing and we're investing in what we think is the future state and not just spending all of our time continuing to incrementally innovate in the base. We're going to be successful as we can handle and absorb all of that data and use technology to make sure we're working on the most important things. That's how I think about it.
Hello. Today I have with me B.J. Boyle. He is the Chief Product Officer of PointClickCare. B.J., it is just my honor to have you here today. And I want to just start by saying congratulations on being a finalist in our top CPO awards this year.
Well, thank you, Renee. Appreciate obviously it's a great honor to be included, but also just super excited to just have a conversation with you and learn a little more.
Yes, and likewise. Why don't we start with doing a quick introduction, 2 minutes or less. Tell us a little bit about you, your company, the role, and maybe a little bit about your journey to CPO.
Sure. Well, start the clock. We'll see if we can keep this under 2 minutes. As you mentioned, BJ Boyle, I am currently the Chief Product Officer at a company called PointClickCare. We are the largest technology provider in the, I would say it's sort of the long-term post-acute care, I think senior care space, as well as now have established a nationwide network that connects those seniors to their caregivers and health plan providers. So we serve into skilled nursing, assisted living, senior living, at home care, but also health plans and hospitals and health systems and other risk-bearing entities across the country. So we're really passionate about, I think of it as sort of taking the friction out of the healthcare journey that you go through, as especially many seniors go to. I've been at PointClickCare for about 8 years. I've worn a few different hats, all in the product realm. I was at one point running our analytics and interoperability products, and had a chance to start essentially a startup within PointClickCare where we focused on how we get outside of the walls of traditional senior care. And that really tested all of my product chops. Whether I was building a product, I had sales, engineering, go-to-market all reporting to me in a little small group as we grew that. And then that led us to launching. We made a couple acquisitions, and now that's a big part of our business. And I have the opportunity to sit across those. Your last question was, how'd you get into product? Probably like everybody else my age, by accident. I think started off in very small software companies where I was implementing and supporting and working with customers and coming back with all of these product ideas. And eventually we said, we need something called product manager. What's that? And I raised my hand, and, the rest is kind of history throughout my journey.
Yeah, I love that. And it's so true. The older we are, the more serendipitous in product management. I feel like there's been so much evolution and much more awareness now about the role of product manager. Even some business schools kind of, getting on the bandwagon and starting to teach it as a specialty. So, I like to say that I ended up a product manager because I kept asking the question, why 2 minutes?
Why? Well, that probably applies in lots of ways. I just think, I think for those of us who've kind of grown this way, a lot of it's rooted in maybe not just asking why, but, I think of myself standing in front of nurses in particular, trying to help them use technology that was frankly making their life less easy and more time consuming, and realizing that wasn't what we were trying to do. And I still see myself, that why is a lot behind what we do. And I think that growth has really shaped me as a product leader, which I think is really interesting versus just the academic path to getting there. I think the merging of the two, like when I look at our teams, is what's really, really fascinating.
I agree 1000%. Well, that's a really great bridge because you've seen the role specifically of product leadership, product management, of course, but product leadership evolve. And I feel like it's really taking a step function over the last 5 to 7 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd love for you to share a few of your insights on how, in your world, you've seen product leadership change.
Sure. Oh man, this is probably a long journey, right? I see a couple of factors that have come into play. I think there's, on one hand, there's the role of product management and product leadership has evolved as technology has become a little easier to deliver, as we've all become more technology consumers. I also think the expectations and the of organizations has shifted. I've watched that happen at PointClickCare, and sort of the evolving role of product managers sort of started off as is sort of subject matter experts, and I think I'm going to put a healthcare lens on this, which I think is always interesting from a health tech perspective. Uh, I would say health tech companies of the last 20 years are filled with nurses or back office experts who knew workflow and knew the products inside and out, and then got hired to be product managers and knew all the content, but didn't really understand the art of product management, whether that's working with engineering or how do you drive go to market. And so what I've seen change specifically in health tech is sort of this balance of like these intersecting circles of, do I understand the market and the customer? Do I understand the art of product management? And then can I speak, the languages of both, whether I'm working with a customer? And I see that as a really interesting evolution. I think it's good for us all. I think on the flip side, as we were mentioning earlier, starting to see more, I don't know, academically trained is the way I would think about it. Product managers. I've noticed, young, newly entering the work, young in terms of experience, in terms of being product management, coming into the workforce, their motivations are a little bit different, right? It's sort of like, I want to work on cool stuff. I want to make an impact. I want to solve meaningful problems, and I want to be around smart people who can help me do that. And I think that's an interesting evolution too. So I see that, and I when I look ahead though, Renee, I see um I see the industry and our roles a little bit at a crossroads where I think we have to embrace technology like it's AI, or but we also have to be able to embrace so many more inputs at our fingertip. What's competition doing? What's the market doing? We're still expected to be financial experts and business model experts and working across those. And so I think we're going to be successful as we can handle and absorb all of that data and use technology to make sure we're working on the most important things. That's kind of how I think about it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Specifically with the lens of product leadership, how do you think those technologies are going to change your job in the next year or two?
Yeah, it's something that I'm spending a good bit of time on right now to try to understand. I think that I hope my PowerPoint time goes on a drastic decline from how we position it. We speaking of like at our organization, I'd like to see us. I still think we spend too much time kind of crafting the same information in multiple different ways for a different audience. I really hope that that we can leverage technology to make it easier to digest information across, to make it easier to get market and user research, to make it easier to, if someone's writing stories, et cetera. I think it's really about how do we look for technology native solutions, and product managers is really going to be important. I also think for us, like just as a CPO and not just worried about the product function, I think that the barrier to entry in markets and to write code is faster than ever before. And I think working in the health tech space, while that's great, the risk barrier hasn't changed. And so making sure that we're balancing that out and we're able to handle the pressure from the board of directors who says, hey, I saw that there's this new AI model. You should better release that in 3 minutes, versus our customers who still need to be, responsible, put it in their workflow and the right model of care, and make sure you can deploy that. And I think those balances are going to be really interesting looking ahead.
Yeah, really fascinating. One more question on, your view of the evolution of the role of CPO. How does all of the different changes you've seen in product management, I love that functional slice versus, the horizontal, like industry specific slice.
Yeah.
How do you think about hiring moving forward, given all of that?
Yeah. I think there's an art and a science to this. Man, I've learned a lot in a role, even in just the last couple of years as CPO, and maybe when I wasn't a CPO, what I thought a CPO did, and as I sit in this role, what I think is really important and expectations. I think one of the things I've learned is that it's so critically important for a CPO to be a strong communicator across the executive leadership group, to make sure we understand the priorities and the trade-offs and how we're in our strategy. And then I think in building that team, I think there's two things that stick out to me. We cannot be afraid to change how we're structured. Like let's not have any sacred cows, if you will, that we have to be structured it to a certain path. I would say make sure that we're aligned to the market objectives, that we're aligned to making sure we're delivering on the highest possible value to our customers. And then when I look at how do we hire, I've been, I think great PMs, those people who are really great, who are curious, who are passionate, who are able to apply that art of PM, can learn markets. I think that, you could ask a lot of those why questions and you can learn a market. I think that when I think about being a CPO for a health tech company, we have to make sure that we have the right balance of skills across the team. It may not be that every person checks every box, but if we bring these new PMs in, do they have the right subject matter experts they can go to, etc. And I think, one of the biggest things, I'm going to probably answer 3 of your different questions, Renee, but I just can't say enough the importance of being with the customers. And so I think having people who are comfortable getting out from behind that keyboard, spending some time in the field, picking up the phone and not just, using the next chat GPT to get the user persona, that we really embrace it. I think that's really going to still be the differentiation for us.
Yeah, so many great insights in there. Thank you for sharing. I was wondering if you were going to go there, so I'm glad you answered because, I always wonder, is it harder to learn product management or is it harder to learn a new industry?
It, that's like a philosophical, religious, political debate all rolled into one. I again, I think it's a balance. When I look at our teams at PointClickCare, I think that we don't have a one size fits all hiring approach. I think sometimes I look at the team to understand. I have a few doctors who are PMs, and we also have PMs who come from engineering or other segments. And I think how they work together is teamwork's also really important here.
It was funny when you said you have doctors that are PM and then you have PMs, and I thought you were going to say PMs who have become doctors. I'm like, oh,
Not yet, but maybe. I don't know.
let's just make sure we don't skip any steps. If that's
That's right. That's right.
anyways, awesome. I'd love to talk to you a little bit about culture because I think data has proven companies with a strong culture are more likely to succeed. So, and you may think that this is a loaded question, but it's not. So hear me out. If I were to paint a picture of a company that was centered around product, centered around sales, or centered around finance, where would you put PointClickCare kind of in that spectrum? And tell us a little bit on how that affects your process, how you make decisions, how you conduct your day-to-day?
Sure. It's a great question. I think just to double down and validate, I think culture is so important on so many reasons. I think about product culture, things like I just believe it's really important to have a product team that starts with yes instead of starting with no, and be naturally curious to investigate those, and be front and center. I also think it's really important to have a product centered organization where possible. I would say that at PointClickCare, we uh we kind of hover back and forth at times between product centered and sales centered, probably like a lot of organizations our size at times. And I want to make sure when I say product centered, and I think you and I have talked about this in the past. When I think about product centered, I don't mean the product team, or the organization. I mean that we're focused on delivering, implementing value, and that our products deliver on that value promise, that the reason why our customers sign up to work with us, and that we want to make sure that we are delivering on that value, we're selling on that value, and that's how we prioritize where we're heading. I think that's the culture that we have at PointClickCare, especially as we enter into new markets, and as you go through. I just think that's really important for organizations, and I think what that means is that product managers need to come and show up and be willing to put themselves in the shoes of the sales team sometimes, and understand that we still have to close deals and we still have to hit the number. And I think whether it's the implementers or the go to market team, have to understand that the product team's probably juggling between 500 different priorities, and how do we choose has to have some data behind it. And I think that, but really all centered around delivering on that value promise. And PointClickCare, we've been around for 20 some years. We certainly have our monolithic solutions and our net new solutions, and we have to balance how we invest. But all of those really need to deliver on that value. And I think that's the heart of being product centered, in my opinion.
Hi, this is Renee Niemi, Resident Chief Product Officer at Products Account. We're taking a quick break to chat with a friend of the show, Mighty Capital. GP of Mighty Capital, SC Mawadi, is here with me. SC, for listeners who don't know yet, what makes your approach different?
We're a product first venture firm, so we back enterprise founders where product is the growth engine. Our edge is what we call the CPO Alpha Effect, which is a data backed framework that helps us source, diligence, and help companies scale faster. That's how we backed category winners like Amplitude, Airbnb, Grok, and more.
Yeah, and the results speak for themselves. You celebrated your 6th IPO with Netscope recently, right?
We're so proud of the founders. And you're right, the goal is compounding product excellence. So over time, about 1 in 5 of our companies becomes an outlier.
Yeah, and you don't just write a check either.
Right. We plug teams into product, design partners, and our CPO fellows who roll up their sleeves on roadmap, pricing, and go to market so that teams hit milestones faster and raise on better terms.
So if I'm a founder building a B2B product, how do I engage?
Well, email me at sc@mighty.capital or message me on LinkedIn or X, and I'm happy to connect.
Awesome. Love it. Learn more at mighty.capital. Now back to the show. Yeah, that's very, very well said. I love, you know, I've had a couple CPOs try to debate me and say, you really need a fourth, which is customer centered.
Ah, interesting.
But I don't think so, because I think you can be, I think all three cultures can have customer at the center.
Yeah.
That's not really the issue. The issue is really, how do you add value? Is it in your sales and support, or is it in the initial product, right? It's like, how do you make decisions, and how do you do the planning? Do you start your planning with, okay, we're we're planning on adding these new features, which will help retention, and we're having this net new products, which will help this growth? Or do you start with finance saying we need to grow 30%, come up with a plan to do that, right? And I truly meant that it's, of course, we're biased for product people. But plus, like cultures, and I think understanding how to live as a CPO in any of these cultures is a really important conversation.
Yeah, I think maybe an unheralded part of a CPO's job is to translate that back to the team and to the peers. I mean, I don't think any of us probably have worked at a company where the finance or the board doesn't have high growth expectations, or the sales, I can think of lots of examples where we're introducing new products to the market and we have a very specific segment, yet there's somebody out here that's kind of like that, that's ready to sign a major deal and we want to go, right? And I think that part of the CPO's job is to help be product led, to say, hey, no, this is the value we're delivering, this is who we're going after, but also translating it back to the product team going, hey, we don't get to live in our ivory tower product and engineering box and just tell everybody, here's what it is. We have to make sure that we're flexible and that we are delivering value. And let's not be so stubborn that maybe our idea could have been wrong and we have to flex, right? And so I think that's a big part of what the CPO has to do, which is translate value to all areas.
Yeah. Maybe AI can create that translator.
Wait, that's true. Anyway, don't underestimate it. Yep.
With that as a backdrop, how do you think about innovation? And I would really love to the extent that you're able to provide, frameworks, and foundational frameworks if you could. But when you think about innovation, how do you make sure that you're investing properly and just striving that right balance between, adding new capabilities to existing products, doing kind of adjacencies versus net new?
Man, I think this is where the art and the science really comes in here. And I can reference a bunch of different things, but I think there's two parts of this. I think number one, I think in your sort of your core business, at PointClickCare, we're serving 7 or 8 different markets. I have 50 some products, if you will, as they go through, everyone at different stages of the life cycle, and how we balance that's really important. I think it's important where I've had the most success is that we really try to be deliberate on, whether it's 60% to growth initiatives and 40% to sustaining and others. In healthcare, you also have a regulatory bucket that can sometimes get in the way. And then I think as a business, how do we make sure that we can also have new waves of innovation, right? One of the things I do is I look at products and markets as over a 3-year window. And if I could start to see, okay, our growth's going to slow, what are the next 3 waves we have coming down? And so a book that I really recommend is Jeffrey Moore's Zone to Win. I don't know if you're familiar with that at all. But it talks about how you have to be able to invest in new markets in what he calls the incubation zone, which allows it at times to separate that out from the core business demand to allow that grow before it's ready to be moved back into this sort of the main engine. And I think it's a balance of both of those.
Fascinating. I'm writing down that name. I can't believe I've missed a Jeffrey Moore book. Big fan. Well, so that leads me really to my next question. So without revealing anything proprietary, when you look at your industry, paint a picture of the future. What does it look like, and what is kind of the big changes that you anticipate? How are you going to prepare your company and your team for that beautiful vision?
Yeah, it's an interesting time we're in. I think, obviously technology and the rise of, whether it's AI or other tools is coming fast, and healthcare has traditionally been a few steps behind. Like in some ways, we've had the ability to kind of look at what's working or whatnot for right reasons ahead of time. But I think we're really, when we look at our business and sort of prepping our team, I think we're at a really critical juncture where, we have largely established as we're a leader as a system of record or a system of movement, right? Where we really are, storing information that was largely built historically in healthcare for regulatory requirements, making sure that healthcare providers can get paid, and then at the third level, it started to be, how do I provide, and drive better clinical outcomes? But it was really always about regulatory and getting paid. And so we went through this major transformation around moving from paper processes to sort of this electronic health record, which is really about sort of modernize that. I think the wave of the future, and we're no different, is really about how do we make sure that we can move from that system of record into sort of system of intelligence or system of action, or both. And I think the real challenge for me as I look at my team or look at the company is, how do we make sure that we're balancing and we're investing in what we think is the future state, and not just spending all of our time continuing to sort of incrementally innovate in the base. And I think that's the balance, probably some in the CPO space. But I think in healthcare, it's really important because, we're seeing things like ambient listening really taking off in the practitioner's office or in physicians. I think we've largely built systems historically that are humans entering data, whether it's in one tool or the other, but it's our manual entry entered into the system to be a record. Now we're seeing devices. I just had a chance to I gathered 4 CEOs of our customers, and we did this roundtable discussion ahead of our customer event that we called Future Shapers. And what we're seeing is we want to, caregivers need to be spending less time inputting data or on tools and more time operating at the highest level of their license. And if it's not going to be uh, tools like ours, it's going to be somebody else. And so I think we need to make sure we're ahead of that wave where, there's lots of ways to collect data and automate it, and sensors and in other areas. And we got to translate that into action. So this is one we could probably turn into a 12-part mini series, Renee. But I think this is one that I really see, healthcare and then technology providers sort of really on this line where things are moving at a different pace than they have historically.
So what does that mean for your team? What does that mean for your company? How are you setting the foundation to make sure you're ready for it?
I think we're still learning. I think that the thing that's changed for the team is there continues to be a lot of pressure about making sure that we're prioritizing the right things, right? The pressure when you hit a certain size, the pressure to continue to deliver on the products we have in market and make our current customers happy, compared to, hey, I have to start investing in new technologies and new approaches to make sure that I can innovate and leap over and disrupt myself 18 months from now is really important. So I think making sure that as a CPO that we can help be really clear about priorities, also kind of filter out some of the executive noise if we need to, and go back to that product-centered conversation we had a while back, which is, what are we doing to deliver value and beyond. One thing I just did that we'll continue to do that I would recommend to any CPO or product VP is we just went through a disruption exercise. And so the exercise was simple. If we had to disrupt ourselves, what would we do? And then what do you have to believe that's the right time to invest in that? What indicators are we looking for? When do we need to be more aggressive?
Yeah, I like that. Disrupt or be disrupted.
That's it.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. I really like that. So getting down to specifics, you have some super strong viewpoints on how product can be used to solve a really, really big problem in healthcare today, which is, staffing shortages. Tell us a little bit more around how you think that can happen.
Sure. I think, the data doesn't lie on this one, right? Our population is getting older. Our the baby boomers are coming in full force, as the beginning tip are starting to hit the age of 80, which is when you start to see higher cost of care heading into senior housing or other environments. And we have all-time sort of critical point of staffing shortages. And what I think that means is that we cannot continue to act and do everything the same way we've always done and expect different results, right? You've heard of pajama time with physicians, where they say they work all day, then they go home and they put their pajamas on and they spend the next 3 hours charting, or nurses who are spending 50% of their time doing things that don't have anything to do with their license. And so what I believe strongly is that we really have to be thinking about, how can technology allow healthcare professionals to work at the highest level of their license? And one of the things I recently heard with a customer was, we want to spend more time caring to the level that we can. And I can do that by things like, how do we apply AI agents in the next 12 to 18 months to eliminate manual tasks that I'm doing? Why am I still coordinating transitions of care? Why am I still manually entering information from a fax machine that comes over when someone shows up from the hospital? Where are there areas that we can facilitate automation so that a nurse can show up? One of the things we talk about is, how do we make the nurse or the doctor or the aide on the floor 5 to 10x more effective? They can do 5 to 10x of the things they need to be doing at the bedside to provide care through technology. And I think, if you think about the baby boomer generation that's coming in, that's going to be causing disruption to the healthcare environment, also has digital native families who are not going to expect to be able to receive an update over a phone call once a week or get a fax, or you want to be real time. And so I think technology providers have to partner with their, healthcare providers to really get us to that state.
Yeah, I'll bet you there's a lot of doctors and nurses out there that are going, yesterday, please.
Well, there's also trepidation, though, right? And I will tell you that about a year ago, we released a feature to early access that did two things. It summarized sort of historical documentation and then created an auto population of a note so that the nurse could review, make edits, and then hit save. And we heard two resounding things. I really love summarization because I don't like looking, I don't like hunting. It's nice to have it all in one place. And I'm really, really uncomfortable with some computer auto-populating a note, because that's what I get paid to do. And so I think we're also on this, yes, take unnecessary stuff away from me, but also we're still on this comfort adoption curve right now that we have to kind of keep going through. And so how do we get through that? Really great product management skills and UX skills, understand the workflow, understand the real problem, understand what the concerns are, and, keep the professional in the loop of those types of things is really important.
Now, I think you bring out a really important point, which is user adoption, especially by industry, changes dramatically.
It does.
And even though their pain is really, really high, their current activities are really, really inefficient, it may take time for them to adopt, just because this is cultural change for them, right?
Yeah. I think it's totally true, and help understand those. I think, and again, I think maybe any CPO who works at a health tech company can relate to this, and maybe not if you're going direct to consumer, but largely, we're still, within 15 years of sort of this electronic boom across healthcare. And those systems, and PointClickCare is no exclusion, nothing excluded from this, were largely built around these sort of anchor experts who either worked at the office or the hospital or the nursing home, these nurses who understood how everything worked, or the physician who understood the process. And the tools were built to make it easier for them to move from a paper world to electronic. I believe that one of the things that's also happening with the staffing shortage is that we're having a lot of people retire. And so there's a lot of younger, new people coming into the field. And so the expectations of technology is going to be a lot different. And I think we can imagine that we can move to a place where we're just teeing up the people you have to worry about, or teeing up the criteria. And so we have to move to staff enablement or staff augmentation more than just documentation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that viewpoint. So what's really interesting is I look at your career trajectory, and you clearly picked healthcare as an industry center. Tell me a little bit around, was that intentional? Was that accidental? And then, what's your why? Like
Sure.
try and stick with it.
You know what? I'm a big believer from a leadership standpoint. You've got to start with vision and go to value to execution. And somebody who wears his passion on his sleeve most times, both good and bad. But I think for me, I have always really loved being connected to, whether it's one or two steps removed from doing something that we can all relate to, right? I started my journey in health tech. I had a brief period of time where I actually left health tech and I went into an analytics and CRM space focused on advertising companies. Um, and I was working there, and I really ended up feeling like I was working really hard to help salespeople drive nicer cars, right? Like that was the end game. And I really felt like I had all this care and knowledge, and it wasn't going to a good enough, drive. And while I was in that window, my grandmother, she was 90. She had a stroke. She had to go to the hospital. She got discharged over to the rehab center, and her medication list didn't come over in full because it got lost in the fax machine. And I was so upset about that in that process, saying, why are we still dealing with that? That I think maybe 6 weeks after she passed away, I was at PointClickCare. And so to me, it was really about, and we talk about this a lot about our culture at PointClickCare. Healthcare is also something especially senior care, so many of us can relate to, right? We can see grandma or grandpa, mom or dad, cousins, aunts and uncles. And so I think we need to just make sure that we don't lose sight of the people on the other end of that technology or who they're caring for. And that matters to me. So that's a big part of what gets me up and going every day. I feel like I'm someone who has to work really well, who will work really hard if I can connect to the problem. And I think that's, I think product health tech has its challenges, but that's one of the reasons so many people in this space keep going and pushing every single day.
I love that personal story. It really drives that passion and connection to what you do. That's pretty remarkable. I do believe fundamentally, I don't know if you agree, but CPOs in particular are d- the successful ones anyway, are motivated by something more than, you know, the paycheck, right?
Yeah.
Oh, a passion, underlying passion for what they're doing, whatever that might be.
I 100% agree with you. But I think probably people in this group or people who will hear this or listen to this can relate. This job isn't for the faint of heart sometimes. So, it's not a job that you're going to make everybody happy every day, certainly. So I think it's sort of having this passion about delivering something that really makes a difference. It doesn't have to be in healthcare, but I think we're largely a curious bunch who are driven to make a difference, but also a little bit competitive. But we want to make sure we're working on something that important and matters. And I think, like, for me personally, that's what gets me through sometimes, where you're going, no, this is why we've got to be stubborn to this direction. Or, yeah, I did listen, and you're right. That's not actually hitting that value we promised. So I totally agree with you.
100%. Awesome. Well, this has been fun. I could do this all day long, every day, but I think people would eventually want to sit.
The tired of us, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Mauricio, we have come to the time. This is just the really quick question answer, real fun, but want your perspective on a couple things. So, you ready?
Yeah.
All right. So, first question, what makes a great product leader?
I think the number one hidden ingredient is curiosity. I think you have to be able to be curious about why a problem exists and how you solve it, and just keep going and going. And I think that's one of those things that's sometimes hard to teach.
Yeah. Yeah, that growth mindset's kind of the corollary to that, but
Yep.
you got to be curious and you got to keep asking that question, why?
Yep.
Why?
Yep. Why? Absolutely.
Exactly. All right, great answer. Okay, what is your favorite tool right now and why?
I've been playing with a few. I'm really just recency bias. I've been getting into Notebook LM. I think it's a Google tool. Trying to figure out a ways to digest and consume information in a different way. So I really appreciate sort of the potential of turning a long document or a PowerPoint into some audio that I could listen to while whether I'm working out or condensing information. So that's one for sure. I know we're also really trying to get deeper into how we leverage AHA as a product organization, and that's been going pretty well for us too. So we're a little late to that game, but we're jumping on right now.
Awesome. And you're not really great at following directions. I did say one, but I love that you gave two. That's awesome.
Well, yeah, as a product leader, I decided if I didn't take a breath, you would just count it. Okay, that was yeah, fair enough.
I love that. You gave us the book earlier, but is there anything else you're reading right now that has high impact?
Kind of somebody who's on our board of directors. I got to know. Her name is Betsy Atkins. She's got a book called Be Board Ready. One of my career goals is to get involved in some boards of smaller companies, because I think it's really important for me as a CPO to kind of expand my knowledge and experience a little bit. So that's one that's been on top of the shelf the last couple weeks.
Ooh, I think that's one that a lot of people listening would appreciate. So thank you for sharing that. Um, Excellent. Last question. Who do you follow and why?
Oh man, there's so many. I think understanding healthcare and technology, where it's going, there's a lot of great follows. I think from a product view, I'm really biased towards. I really enjoy Melissa Perry, "Escaping the Build Traps," of one of probably the book that has the most folded and wrinkled pages in my library. I think her podcast's great. I really enjoy everything that she puts out there around product, and I know we share that a lot with our team too.
Good to know. Thank you for sharing. BJ, always love our conversations. This one was especially fun. Thank you so much for taking the time and sharing all of your great knowledge. And again, congratulations on being a finalist. Now everybody knows why.
Well, thank you, Renee. I appreciate that, and always also enjoy our conversations. And it's really thrilled to even just be included and be able to have the conversation. So I appreciate it.